What's the next big thing that few people are talking about? Blockchain and AI don't count, because they're being talked about plenty. Personal vehicles will be getting both bigger and smaller. What's different from the past is that electric motors scale much better than IC engines. Both the world's smallest vehicles, kids' toys, and the largest vehicles, huge mining trucks, are both electric. First, the small. Cities will soon start to ban all but electric vehicles in their downtown cores, already happening in some Chinese cities. The primary reason being electric vehicles don't emit the poisonous gases that IC vehicles do. The next phase will be only EVs that are half the width of a normal car lane will be allowed in the downtown core. Most vehicles in the downtown core now are single occupancy. A city can double its downtown vehicle infrastructure for free by restricting most EV vehicles to taking up just half a lane. These vehicles will be much cheaper too, probably less than $10,000. Now the big ICRVs are a bit of a pain, but an all-electric RV will be much better all around. That's because all of the required functions will be electric and run off the huge battery. Hot water, TVs, heat, refrigeration, very little maintenance, just like a normal house, but smaller. Tesla vehicles already have camp mode and people love it. Image when Tesla builds an EV RV. This will become young people's first home. Buy it for $70,000 and live in it for much less than rent. When you finish uni, you own an asset rather than peeing your money away on rent. Oh, and for weekend trips to the lake or the ski mountain and all that, couldn't be more convenient. Remember, you read it here first. Edit, a few typos. I think the recent electric scooter boom and subsequent pushback by communities shows that there is, huge, pent-up demand for last-mile style electric transportation, scooters, bicycles, etc. The electric drive technology is starting to reach a point where it can support a whole new space of designs that make this sort of transportation appealing to a wide variety of users, i.e. not just fit young adventurous people, the elderly, young children, etc. Sadly, infrastructure, laws, and social norms move way too slowly and are the limiting factor for what could be a major quality of life improvement for many people. Note that EVs that are half the width of a normal car lane, probably less than $10,000, is a pretty good description for the electric cargo bikes that are already starting to emerge. I would love to see cities and towns adapt faster to accommodate things like this. The car replacement bicycle, the Bike Fiats. How to transport kids by e-bike. This American mayor is creating the ultimate biking city. Tesla RV for $70K. Can you teleport me into your alternate universe, please? Smile? Different brand might make more sense, but even those will probably cost you at least double that, unless you're maybe only talking about certain climate zones, bare minimum living standards and an abhorrent range, together with some other bad trade-off decisions regarding price versus quality. Or maybe in a decade or two, at today's prices / without inflation. Also, others made the point already about rent for the space to park on. Most likely outcome would be high taxes and rent for RV parks. Don't think they'd be much more efficient than regular housing on a square feet basis, especially if you're not putting them on top of each other, Ready Player One style. Half-width vehicles ignores the following issues: buses. How do you make them half-width? Or perhaps, uncharitably, do you think public transportation is worthless? If buses stay the same width, how do you write the driving regulations for mixed-width vehicles and retrain the driving public so that fatalities do not skyrocket? Bulk delivery vehicles. Same as above. Half-width means less vehicle stability at speed. Reducing vehicle height is constrained by human size. Worse stability means reduced speeds to reduce fatalities. Consider San Francisco, where a large proportion of the city cars are from commuters traveling 30 to 60 miles per day. What are the rules for commuter roads with mixed-width vehicles? Reduced width would likely mean smaller wheels, increasing rotational speed. Tire and brake pad wear is now a non-trivial factor of car pollution. Half-width vehicles would could make this worse. Batteries do not scale like you claim. A diesel Semi is much lighter than an electric Semi is. That's why Tesla Semi hasn't launched yet. They are currently trying to change the regulation for maximum allowances on US roads from 10K to 14K. The Delta V on an electric vehicle has the problem that the battery scales more proportionately to weight and range than a diesel equivalent. Diesel gas has a tremendous amount of energy stored so compactly that is impossible to match with electric batteries. Halving vehicles has been possible for a long time, also seen it mentioned numerous times over the years. Unless large and small vehicles never use the same roads ever, it will never happen. Imagine being in a small car and being hit by a large car. Odds of person in small car dying are much higher. Basically, something like this will only have a chance in an authoritarian society. As for the RV, you still need parking and most people don't want to live in the middle of nowhere. Most cities are already strict on RV living, especially long-term local RV living. If it became even more popular, they would become even more strict. RV also are impossible to insulate, as a result, frequently follow the weather. Majority of people don't want to be constantly driving around to find and adjust to a new location. Electric RVs require parking, charging facilities, sanitary facilities, and maintenance. A few people with camp mode is a complete different proposition to millions of people with mobile homes. Not to say it couldn't be done, but cities would have to become mobile labor camps and the infrastructure costs would be significant, mostly the cost of space formerly used by brick and mortar real estate. And owners would be charged rent for use of facilities. So that $70,000 is not going to be rent-free. All of this is likely to happen in Europe/China, much less in US where corporations still rule and there are much less federal rules, and almost no chance in most of Africa/Middle East/India which have no infrastructure for this. How is living in an EV/RV any different from living in a motorhome today? Most people want an actual home/apt, not a cramped car with no space. It's not the same thing at all. The battery RV thing will probably hit the same issue as people who already tried this housing hack, legal bans. They're still going back and forth in the courts, but Mountain View, Louisiana, San Diego and probably other such places that become the next target will probably fight this legally, for the same reasons they fight any other type of cheap housing. Too soon the infrastructure to fast charge EVs at home will require power grids to be of much higher capacity. Also, all the fossil fuel that we burn now needs replacement by non-fossil fuel sources, other than nuclear. Nothing can deliver. We already know how slow the world is at re-embracing nuclear, so don't hold your breath just yet. I think this is a good insight, and I hope this comes to pass, but a couple points. Greater than the world's largest vehicles, huge mining trucks, are electric. What about cruise ships, freighters, freight trains and aircraft carriers? They're diesel or nuclear powered. Or maybe nuclear still counts as having an electric motor, just with a nuclear generator instead of a battery. Greater than only EVs that are half the width of a normal car lane will be allowed in the downtown core. Honest question, wouldn't tipping be a major problem for half-width cars? And the amount of space needed between cars wouldn't go down much, so if you need at least 4 feet of clearance on either side, and your lane is 5 feet wide, your cars can only be 1 foot wide. This explains why most vehicles thinner than a car are motorcycles or electric scooters. Greater than the next phase will be only EVs that are half the width of a normal car lane will be allowed in the downtown core. I don't think anyone's going to bother. I think we'll just all do what Paris did and kick them out, rather than to try to create a whole new batch of differently sized ones. Energy. I feel like it's been talked about a lot but maybe not. Solar panels are dropping in cost at an exponential rate, 0. As of this writing, consumer new panels are $0.75/W and used are at around $0.30/W right now. I won't give a link as a Google search will do. Battery technology is also dropping at an exponential rate. I believe, with a little effort, one can purchase batteries at about $0.08/WH. Taken together, one can purchase a 30 kWh, daily, solar panel and battery storage system for about $4,200, not including labor and extra hardware/electronics, which puts the return on investment, ROI, at about 3.5 years if we consider the average house spends around $1,200 in the USA. Dropping costs will quickly put that in the 2-year ROI range, which, in my opinion, is the inflection point where it effectively becomes too good to pass up for the average consumer. The dropping price of energy comes with all sorts of side effects, like a potentially decentralized energy grid, use cases for excess energy, e.g. Bitcoin mining, carbon capture, hydrogen production, etc., novel power storage systems, etc., which is maybe the novel part that I haven't heard too much talk about. Zero? This is actually talked about on every HN Energy thread and it's now incorrect, particularly about batteries. Solar has supply bottlenecks at the moment that are stopping further price declines. Hopefully they will get solved. But there's a lithium shortage that is already showing up in the price of lithium going up 5x. Analysts predict that by around 2025 lithium will limit the battery market that is trying to grow 40x to meet electrification demands. 1. Note that opening a new lithium mine takes a minimum of 7 years. Sodium-based batteries are coming to help this situation, but they are a new technology that will take time to productionize and ramp up. 1. Tangentially related, there are a bunch of calculators out there for ROI on installing solar, but there doesn't seem to be one that will take into account the opportunity cost of installing solar now instead of waiting until it's cheaper. I would love to see one for that. Hopefully the other pieces get cheap enough to enable some revolution in the wiring side of it. Falling costs enable some acceptable loss of efficiency, so you can blow 100 watts on unnecessary power conversion and another 100 watts or whatever on losses due to smaller cabling. It badly needs to be standardized in a consumer-friendly way, like power over Ethernet in reverse. Field installable, hot pluggable, foolproof connectors. You can get 90 watts over some variations of network cabling, bump that up a couple sizes, so you can handle 400 watts. So you buy a bunch of solar panels and some patch cables, and plug those into a one or more power switches on the rooftop. Then run a QSFP plus equivalent power backhaul down into utility room where you have your power aggregation switch which has a bunch of power QSFP plus ports and plug batteries into a few of those. And of course a couple big QSFP 28 ports to an inverter to power legacy 120 volts loads, which maybe someday you don't need anymore as household things move to using polar power over large Ethernet. I saw an article recently, here maybe, that the world could switch to 100% green energy and make the investment back in 6 years. I haven't looked at the math behind it, and actually getting that many solar panels up is going to take some time too, but it really seems to me like this is the main thing we should all be focusing on right now. Because of high fossil energy prices, getting rid of Russian gas, and of course because of climate change. 3 very big reasons to go all out on clean energy. Apologies for responding to my own message, but I wanted to add that we can also put a timeline on it. The dropping price puts the rollout/adoption within the next 10 to 15 years. So it's not just a matter of if, but we have a guess as to when as well. Greater than taken together, one can purchase a 30 kWh, daily, solar panel and battery storage system for about $4,200. I haven't researched it, but I feel like I'd have paid $20–40K for such a system. What gives? Is it all just labor and regulations? Why can't we solve that? I wouldn't get too excited for decentralized energy. More energy sources means more power lines all over the place. Few things get NIMBYs worked up like power lines. The social aspect will be harder to solve than the engineering. Panels are dropping but installation costs have not. Now more than half of the cost is installation. The real impact will be with the utility size installations. We need a way to reduce cost for all the other costs outside the panels. Valon sensing. Off-the-shelf mesh Wi-Fi systems are capable of sensing people reliably. This includes key, position, motion, and gestures. Here is the IEEE spec due for approval in a year or two. I have mixed feelings on the tech. The home security implications are amazing, and things like automatic fall detection for the elderly would be a literal lifesaver. Small business could gain great insight into customer behavior. On the other hand, it's just creepy. How do you prevent the next apartment over from spying through your walls? Is the hotel Wi-Fi going to recognize and catalog physical activity between two people? Anyway, Plume already makes a home security system that utilizes the tech. Most big retailers use this tech already to track how customers walk through their stores. There's lots of other examples. This was just a quick Google search. I remember interviewing for shopping center chain, Mall. They had this in 2018 already. It had an accuracy of +/1 meter, but they had ways to normalize it to the layout of the store. Didn't require them to even be on the network, just have their Wi-Fi on. They not only used it to price their storefronts, but they also could tell their renters which parts of the store had higher traffic. Meaning they would know what sells better, where people go from which section. It's literally web analytics but Earl. I had no idea about this, and the implications are truly terrifying and amazing. It's not just Wi-Fi at home, the entire world is now a big mesh network. So theoretically it means literally everything everywhere which has Wi-Fi coverage can now be tracked with amazing accuracy. Quite possibly the most scary/invasive tech. Greater than. On the other hand, it's just creepy. How do you prevent the next apartment over from spying through your walls? Is the hotel Wi-Fi going to recognize and catalog physical activity between two people? I would imagine you just take the country/private club model and extend it out. For example, a private club enforces limits on who can access the club, and you get more privacy since the other people in the club also had to pass through those limits. In this case, the club/hotel/builder of your house can say the walls are all Faraday rated so that you get audio, visual and EM privacy when you stay here. Tooling for developing real-time collaborative remote working environments is about to take off dramatically. CRDTs, 0, while complex to work with until recently, are now so much easier for developers to use with toolkits such as AIS-1 and AutoMerge 2. SaaS and PaaS companies proving tooling around these, enabling developers to easily build collaborative tools for specific niches and verticals, are going to explode into the market. Every 5-ish years there is a big new database tech that receives massive investment for both enterprise and small business. Real-time CRDT-based data stores are the next big thing, in my view. CRDTs are often only talked about in relation to rich text editing, but generic CRDTs that represent standard data types, think JSON, and basic operations to them, inset, edit, remove, are able to represent so much more. You can use them for building so many CRUD-type business apps, and by using a CRDT as your base data representation you get conflict-free collaborative, and offline, editing for free. The nice thing about both AIS and AutoMerge is that they provide both rich text and JSON-like data types, covering 95% of what people would need for building business apps. 0? 1. 2. Did this 20 years ago in an FMMS. It's not worth it. It's better to have an arbiter source of truth that can guarantee ACID principles with transactions rather than introduce merge conflicts or lose transactions for lack of synchronization. The internet is almost everywhere, so use that rather than provide academic features that cause more headaches than they solve. SQL databases with transactions and row locks are invaluable inventions. Also, if you want to collaborate, synergize, innovate, and revolutionize, consider OTs. They're a known quantity. Handling mergers of data is fraught with landmines. You can't sell two of something to the same person offline and know if they wanted one or two. Plus, giving an end user the ability to resolve merge conflicts is asking for theft and fraud. Sync work process is inefficient. 80% of the time I would define work process to be asynchronous, for example with Git branch, pull request, docs, backlogs. This is efficient collaboration. Real-time collaborative tool is a thing but not going to be big. Ideally, I would go 100% async work if possible. I'm not nearly educated enough about this subject to try to summarize it, but the research being carried out by Michael Levin's group into how organisms control anatomy growth is completely fascinating and has the feel of a breakthrough. Almost all the talks I've seen are good. For example, creating new species without genetic changes seems wild. This one is the winner for me in the thread. I saw a video of it a while ago and I was fascinated by the idea that voltage differences are the way the DNA gets expressed. Yet nobody seems to be taking about the bioelectrical science of it except for this small academic crowd. I am also not nearly educated enough, and also following this work very closely. With the strides made in the past several years, I'm always surprised I don't see it being discussed more, outside of a niche of academics. Deconstruction of discourse, the vast majority of humans out of the decision loop. All the main online sources are moving to subscription models with higher subscriptions for the real information. Only those with money will have access to information that informs decisions. At the low end, information is bundled only for its entertainment or propaganda value. At the same time, decisions are increasingly automated as vast data streams are digested by automated processes. 20 or 100 years ago, people could stop work or stop buying or protest in the street. 20 to 100 years from now, there will be nothing the vast bulk of people can do to change their fate. The resulting lack of citizen governance will at best be a world broken into geographic silos headed by corporate kietsu. So the next big technical thing will be domain-specific semantic models to drill down past what AI can do with probabilistic models, just as the economy has moved well past bulk goods to bespoke services. For example, the Nature article today providing a model for immune system cell surface protein interactions. Pre-internet, everyone had to pay for access to information. How is that different from what's happening online now? Maybe it was a uniquely open time and we are reverting to what it was like in the past. DC home electricity. If your future home has solar and local storage, and your domestic usage is mostly in appliances which convert back down to DC immediately behind the plug socket, most of us have this, then at some point we're going to start wanting to power our homes like houseboats or camper vans. Yes, this won't help for, e.g., appliances with heating elements. I'm probably talking about a second discrete wiring loop rather than a total replacement, and it's hard right now to find a TV with the DC transformer on the outside. But it'd be quite a lot more efficient for almost everything else most of us do. Look around the room you're in now and count how many things use more than 19 volts DC internally. Where I'm sitting right now, it's none greater than, and your domestic usage is mostly in appliances which convert back down to DC immediately behind the plug socket. Most of us have this, then at some point we're going to start wanting to power our homes like houseboats or camper vans. Most of these appliances use low voltage which travels poorly over long distances. Your car, camper van, and boat all use ultra-thick cables to move 12 volts. This is quite uneconomical for anything larger than a small studio apartment. Copper isn't cheap. Furthermore, note that I said 12 volts, which is what cars and capers use. Not sure about boats, Some DC appliances need 5 volts, some need 20. They all need converters. So how are both of those problems solved? You'll probably send 100 to 200 volts, DC, though the wall. The big question is, does this really simplify anything? The big advantage with AC is that it's super easy to change voltage. With a simple transformer. What do we gain by going DC in the walls? Are there any real advantages in simplifying voltage conversion at appliances? Is it worth the added complexity of a whole house AC-DC converter, or the complexity of a DC grid? This isn't going to happen because it's much cheaper to transmit higher voltages than higher currents. Your PC running at 500 watts only needs a conductor capable of transmitting 4.2A with conventional 120 volts. If you switch to a 12 volts source, that same 500 watts now needs a 42A conductor. It's just not practical. It seems that other than a few power-hungry appliances, oven, kettle, washing machine, heat pump, water heater, gaming PC, the rest are low-power digital devices that need up to about 200 watts, PS5 gaming console peak reported usage, even large TVs use much less than that. I would love to see a comprehensive study of a home that would be designed and built around the concept of using two energy sources, AC and 48 volts DC, backed by battery storage and power grid in case of smaller installations or northern climate. Would it make sense to do that on a large scale? Having smaller, energy-efficient house should limit the need for long copper cables. We would also exclude all those AC-DC converters from today's devices, leaving us with something similar to a USB-C PD, working in the range 5 to 48 volts, which of course still is a converter but could be a standardized DC-DC one. If I am correct, then the main advantages would also include not running solar inverter all the time but only when there is a need for a lot of power, where it should be much more efficient, thus also extending its lifespan. Having said that, I do not have enough knowledge to judge whether possible gains would warrant going into this direction for future home installations. I would very much appreciate all comments and maybe some further reading material. Greater than I'm probably talking about a second discrete wiring loop rather than a total replacement. I have considered this sort of thing for the basics around the house, in my head at least. A separate lighting loop in each room plus outside, comms cupboard and some USB/USB-C ports. Could be all powered by a couple of car batteries and not a lot of solar panels. 100% would do this sort of setup if I built a home office shed, but otherwise the plans remain in my head. Sorry, replying to myself, but by way of example, I recently discovered that old-style UK plugs, BS546 ones, are still rated for DC domestic supply. So in at least one or two corners of the world this whole notion is already supported with a semi-familiar interface. Climate migration. What happens Europe now / since 2015 is nothing that will come in the next couple of years. And the individual countries and so as the EU is pretty much unprepared. I'd even say that will be one of the cause of downfall of the Union. I am under the impression that instead of preparing for climate immigration, EU citizens are actually slowly but surely mutually brainwashing themselves into increasing hate towards immigrants as a whole. From what I read and understood about climate change, a tsunami of immigrants from Southern Hemisphere countries towards Northern Hemisphere countries is to be expected. I would rather have my elected ones work on a framework that will govern how this immigration could occur and how to make it work in everyone's best interests. But it seems that people will mostly vote for whoever tells them he or she will make the country impenetrable. Europe's population is aging drastically, we make less children and our workforce is shrinking. We produce less people that can offer social/medical/health care to the elders, less people who can pay taxes, and also less people who can defend the territory in case of armed conflict. Retirement planning is a catastrophe. Younger generations are privileging individualized financial planning mechanisms instead of state-protected and tax-deducible solutions, and conversion rates for pension funds are also diminishing year after year. Finally, non-white immigrants seem to be perceived by locals as posing a security threat and nothing more. Whether I look at my family, my friends or my colleagues, I feel surrounded by people who refuse to engage in the thought experiment further than we should reinforce our borders. Am I in denial when I acknowledge that both a mass immigration will occur towards the Northern Hemisphere, whether smoothly, or by force, and that any economy needs to preserve a strong workforce to keep flourishing? What am I missing here? Just to be contrary, I feel it's worth considering that as solar overtakes wind as the cheapest electrical source and keeps dropping, and everything electrifies, even fertilizer and methane production, the migration might go in the other direction. Sun too hot for agriculture. Stick some PV over it as shade. Not enough water, stick some PV over it for shade, use it to power trickle irrigation of desalinated water. If carbon offsets are used to install PV in such nations, it's a win-win-win-win. Another post talks about a new generation buying battery EV RVs to live in. If they did, where would they tend to go? Somewhere where the climate provides cheap solar power and low heating needs. We'll most probably increase the handouts to the autocrats bordering us, so that they'll do the dirty job in our place. See Erdogan, see how what was basically a state coup went almost unnoticed in Tunisia.
Hey guys, this is the Rogue YouTuber here. I recently had a big change in my life. I had a baby daughter. Here she is. If you could do me a favor and remember to hit the subscribe button and bang the bell, I'm hoping to really create a YouTube channel that really gets people excited and brings people the best, most interesting content collated from across the internet. I'm saving up to save my little girl to Carnegie Mellon Computer Science Department. So please remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.